Hello, and welcome to Arts and Entertainment.
With Chris and Randall.
I'm Chris,
I'm Randall.
and today we have a special guest. Uh, Before we go any further, if you are a regular listener to the show or you're brand new or watching this show, we'd love for you to subscribe or to comment, to share, to like. And if you want to reach out to us because you have some questions or you have some ideas, some future episodes, Randall, what's the best way for people to get in touch with us?
Well, first of all, check out our website, chrisandrandall.com. There's different ways you could find our stuff on there. Our Facebook page is a good way to leave a comment and communicate with us.
Excellent. And today is a different show. We are doing another show where we have a guest on. Today's show, we're going to talk about the awards show, the movie awards show. We just recorded this only a couple days after the 2021 Academy Awards. So I don't know when you're listening to this, but right now it is, April 28th, 2021. And the last Academy Awards was on Sunday. Now, here's an interesting thing, Randall. I looked this up. The most watched American television, I'm talking about here, the most watched Academy Awards ever was the 42nd Academy Awards, which, can you guess what year the 42nd Academy Awards would be?
No, what year?
1970. Can you guess which film won for Best Picture that year?
What film, Chris?
Midnight Cowboy.
Oh.
Which is the first X-rated film ever to win an Academy Award. It was a charming little film starring Jon Voight and Dustin Hoffman.
Well, for the younger viewers out there, I just want to tell them that the X rating was introduced as a way to have movies with adult content, because movies used to be all G-rated, basically, and then it became taken over by porno. So this is before Midnight Cowboy was before that, before the porno industry took over the X rating.
Fair enough. But it does feature sex, drug use, homosexuality, prostitution, which is pretty wild when you consider that only a few years earlier, the Best Picture was Dr. Dolittle.
Right. It's not pornographic, though. Midnight Cowboy's not pornographic. Just
yeah.
There's gonna be a lot of disappointed younger people trying to watch that movie,
but it was a big difference. We're gonna ask actually our guests in a moment, but I really do want to talk about this. But I think it is a fair thing to say that the most watched Oscar, the 1970, that was a watershed year for filmmaking, for Hollywood, for the Oscars. 44% of the American households in that year watched that show. I mean, back then the population was 205 million people total, so I'm thinking it must have had around 40 to 15 viewers when you think of adults. Past Sunday was the 93rd. The movie that won for Best Picture was Nomadland. That one, which was the lowest rated one, actually our total population now is 331 million people, and about less than 10 million people watched the Oscars on Sunday. So my question, Randall, the one that I really want to explore today, is what's happened, man? Are Oscars still relevant? How does the film award process work? Are these awards, not just the Oscars, but any of the awards that we're talking about, Golden Globes, SAG Award, UGA, whatever, are they still relevant? Are they still a definition of excellence in the craft of filmmaking? Are they still say something about excellence in storytelling? Do they reflect the society and the culture that these films are made in? Do they simply reflect the taste of a limited elites? And I thought, who better to ask than an actual member, a cog in this machine of Hollywood, than my friend Bill Gucwa. Bill is a Hollywood screenwriter, a WGA member, and he grew up here in Hollywood. He grew up in the industry. He has had a long and extensive background with it. So let's introduce Bill. Hey, Bill.
Howdy. Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
You are, you're actually so hysterical. I just say that you're a local boy, but you're like me. You were born in New York City.
I was born in New York, but I moved when I was a little kid. I've been out here in Los Angeles since 1971. So I had two parents that were born in Brooklyn, So I grew up with some New York sensibilities, but lived in Los Angeles my whole life. So I figure I straddle both worlds, and like I said, New York sensibilities.
Your parents, like a lot of New York parents, they were big movie fans. So I'm assuming they got you into movies at a ridiculously young age.
Yes, absolutely. One of the first movies my mom took me to was Rosemary's Baby.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I think I was 4 or 5 years old. I had a lot of questions during the film.
Hey, Randall, how old were you when you first saw like a grown-up film with your mom?
My mother rented Revenge of the Nerds on VHS. We just got a VCR, and my mom's like a giant nerd, so she was interested in this movie, but there's a lot of nudity in it, and she didn't know that, so it was an accident. I think I was in high school. I was like 13 or 14.
High school. Yeah, this is the thing about New York parents. My mom took me to see Shampoo when I was like probably like 6 or 7. Again, a lot of crazy nudity. This is like the New York thing. So anyway, I'm sorry, Bill. I didn't want to cut you off. There's a certain air of perversity that you and I were both growing up in. So my point is, you grew up, you loved movies. I think you've told me, what was your favorite film as a kid growing up?
Actually, my favorite film as a kid growing up, believe it or not, is The 10 Commandments, the Cecil B. DeMille 56 version. Wow. It's not the greatest movie ever made, but I saw it at a very early age, and it made me want to get into movies. So it's actually my favorite film. I watch it every year.
When was the first time you ever met like a Hollywood movie star?
I met my first Hollywood movie star, I'd have to say, would be, I was 13, and I met Charlton Heston. He had written a book at the time. It was in 1976, and he had written a book called The Actor's Life, and it was basically he had published his diaries. And he was one of the first actors to actually go on a book tour. A lot of actors didn't really write that many books about their career, and let alone go on book signing tours. He was kind of one of the first, and so he was at our local mall here in the San Fernando Valley, and I met him at the book signing, and it was I was beyond thrilled because, like I said, The 10 Commandments was my favorite movie, and I was meeting one of my favorite actors, so it was a thrill.
And you were also a big fan of Planet of the Apes, right? And
big Planet of the Apes, and of course behind me is a poster of Ben-Hur, which is holds the record with Titanic as the most Academy Awards for a film. 10.
Did you have Planet of the Apes toys as a child?
I certainly did. My little sister, she loved the TV show. I loved the movies. She liked the TV show, and that's when the toys actually came out, during the TV series. There weren't that many toys during the filming when the films came out. I had
the treehouse, the Fortress treehouse.
Yes.
I had
Treehouse
the piggy bank.
Yeah.
Comic books.
There was a Planet of the Apes board game, if I remember correctly. There was
also a live TV show.
Well, it's funny, people talk about Star Wars being the first film that really used the merchandise to their benefit. Actually, it was Planet of the Apes. Planet of the Apes was the first space opera, and it was really one of the first to really use merchandise. Walt Disney did it with Mickey Mouse back in the 30s and 40s, so let's not go crazy. But as far as tying in one film, Planet of the Apes was one of the first.
Well, that's where Lucas got the idea, right?
Okay.
That's where Lucas got the idea for the merchandising, right? I mean, that I've read that.
The template was there, so I can't see how he would ignore it. I mean, it really is. And Chris and I have talked before. I think Planet of the Apes is my favorite. I think the best science fiction movie ever made. But there's arguments to be made.
A little known fact about you, Bill, is you have a son. And
I do.
What's your son's name?
His name is Heston. I named him after Charlton Heston.
His first name is Heston?
His first name is Heston, yes.
What's his middle name?
His middle name is Douglas, and his last name is Gucwa. That's my last name. But I told him Gucwa's a tough word to live with. People always mispronounce it. So I told him if he becomes an actor, he cuts off the Gucwa and he's Heston Douglas, which I think is a great stage name.
That is an amazing stage name. So speaking of which, when you were a little bit older than your son, but not by a lot, you were a teenager, right? You got a job working on the Universal lot?
It was my first job, yes. I was 18. I was one of the youngest tour guides. at the time, and I knew I wanted to get into movies. I knew I didn't have to go to college to do it, and so my dad was thrilled to hear me say that I wasn't going to go to college because he didn't want to pay for it. But that's just the New Yorker in him. But it was a great gig because it really was my college. It was a fantastic job. I still have friends to this day. I was Victoria back in 1982. It was a long time ago. But the great thing about the job, the reason why it was like a college, is because not just giving the tour, which was great, driving on or being on the tram and pointing out your favorite sets from your favorite movies and explaining and telling stories to hundreds and hundreds of visitors a day was a great job. But on our day off, we were allowed to visit any set that we wanted. We could go to any filming. We would get the call sheets for that week, and we would know exactly what was filming. And on our days off, we were allowed to visit. So if you had any interest in filmmaking, if you wanted to be get into wardrobe or editing or sound mixing, you could go to that specific part of the lot and sit in on any sessions you want and actually get an internship. You could work for free. And so it allowed me to visit every single facet of filmmaking. And why I got into writing, I have no idea. So
you had a writing partner, right, who came out of that same program with
Yes. You? Yeah, I had a writing partner. He was also a tour guide, and we had an epiphany one day, and we said to each other, gosh, we can write bad scripts just like everybody else. So that was our goal. Our bar was set real low, but like the job as being a tour guide was great. And I was able to meet many of my favorite actors because they would actually come on the tour. Interestingly enough, movie stars were very hesitant to bringing family members on the set because I don't know if you've ever been on a movie set. It's very boring. Sometimes it takes hours and hours to set up a shot that maybe will take 2 or 3 minutes to shoot. And so there's a lot of waiting around on a movie set. And a lot of movie stars thought, or actors would think, it's better off if I take my second cousins to the tour. They're going to get a better idea of how movies are made than actually sitting on a movie set for 8 hours. Doing nothing because no one's going to explain anything on a movie set. Everyone's too busy to do that. So you would have, I met Jimmy Stewart as a tour guide. He brought his great grandchildren on the tour and I was able to meet him. And I met Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson. And I met so many people. I mean, it really was the best job I've ever had.
When you are around like movie people, both the people who are the stars and the people who work behind the camera, and that's your world. I don't know about you, Randall, but I always imagine that there's something about those people that's very different than the kind of people you would find in an office or a factory or, in any other business, or is it very similar?
Meaning like people they're
like the people, like are they just like is it not that different than working in a
Are they
factory?
just like us?
Yeah, that's what Randall.
Well, you know what? Working. I've worked in production. I've worked in pre-production, and I've worked in post-production, and it's a very hard business. The hours are very long. People are very hardworking, very, very, and they're very. Their work ethic is impeccable, and with motion pictures. Most crews that work on a TV show or movie, I'll use Clint Eastwood as an example. He uses the same crew members. He's not the first actor to ever do that or director to do that. John Ford, when he made his movies, he used the same actors. He'd use the same crew members because it is so hard. There's so many hours that are involved. You first have to rely on everybody everyone to do their job correctly. And you also, 9 times out of 10, you want to get along. If someone is hard to get along with, and you're working with them for 14 hours, there's going to be problems. So I would say that most people that work on a movie are hardworking, diligent, just like everybody else. They really are. They're fantastic in my experiences. Now, yes,
like you've been like a driver. I know you drove one of my favorite directors, Michael Apted, who did the 7 Up series, like a Bond film, Bring On the Night, a great filmmaker and documentarian, and you guys go IMDb him because right now I'm drawing a blank, but like that's a guy, he's a career director, just passed away. So like when you pick him up to work, or at the end of the day, it's a tired guy. What is that like? What is that?
Well, it's just like anything. I was a driver for a short period of time in my career, in between writing gigs, and I knew a good friend of mine was a Teamster captain, and they needed people to drive the talent, and I was lucky enough to drive Michael Apted around, and he was a very dry wit. In the mornings, he was a professional. He wanted me to show up on time, and get him onto the set on time. That was it. But we would be in the car for many hours, and we had wonderful conversations about film. He was a wonderful gentleman. I've driven actors. I drove Kevin Kline around for a movie. The one-on-one, when you talk to anybody one-on-one, I think everybody really is just normal. It's when people get into crowds or mobs, we all become different. Maybe, I'm not sure, but that's not to say that I haven't witnessed bad behavior in films. I have. There are people with large egos, and people have gotten away with a lot of things in the movie industry because it's such a coveted job. Everybody wants to work in the movies.
So in a one-on-one,
take advantage of that sometimes.
So in a one-on-one, non-working situation with these famous people, do they make conversation with you? Is it different with each one?
Well, it depends. It really depends. The funny thing about when I was driving, the number one rule was not to talk to them because they're usually busy preparing to be on the set, maybe learning their lines or going over their notes. And my job was, I was told specifically not to talk to them. So they would have to start the conversation. And if they did start the conversation, then I would continue, then I would talk. But you learn just like anything when people are in the mood to talk and when they're not. But
so they're normal people is what you're saying. Sometimes they'll talk to you, sometimes they won't. It's
funny. My mom was a big movie buff, and she told me this one story. She cut class for school, and she went into Manhattan, and she's with her girlfriend, and she bumps into Tyrone Power. Tyrone Power was a Hollywood movie star in the 1940s and 50s. And she asked for his autograph, and he looks at her and he says, "You can go to the hotel." He was at the plaza. They were right in front of the plaza. He says, "You go to the hotel and you can get a signed autograph from the manager." And my mom told him to go screw himself. And now
that's a Brooklyn in you.
After that, but the point was is that it ruined her perspective of Tyrone Power. She couldn't watch any more of his movies because he considered him an asshole. And maybe Tyrone Power was having a bad day. Maybe he, who knows? Can you judge somebody by one meeting? I don't know. But if somebody consistently shows up on the set and treats people poorly, then I would say then they basically have a problem. To this day, I'm hesitant to go up to
you and Randall.
You can meet somebody, you can meet a movie star or an actor, and depending on their day, we all have bad days, and so you can't really judge somebody on one meeting. Again, when I was a kid at 13, I went to a book signing and I met Charlton Heston. He was on great behavior. He was selling a book. He couldn't have been nicer to me. He knew I was a huge fan. He signed my book and personalized it. He was having a good day, but he was in front of a lot of people.
Well, Bill, could I ask you a question about this? I mean, this is getting way off topic, but
go ahead.
There's some people who believe that these celebrities, because of all the benefits they get with being a celebrity and the pay and all this, they have some kind of duty to the public to be nice to people and treat people with kindness and respect when they encounter their fans or whatever. And it's quite bad form for them to have a bad attitude, as you described with your mother and Powers. So what do you think about that kind of opinion?
Well, it's the separation, I think, of private and public life, and it's sort of a dichotomy for an actor, because in the beginning of their careers, they're looking to be famous. They want to be recognized, and then when they become recognized, they want to be private. And you can't really have it both ways because people pay money to see them. So in the old days, actors were protected by the movie studio. You had publicists protected them. So if an actor went out to a club or a restaurant and they got drunk and caused a scene, the studio protected them or tried to cover it up or created their private life and created their on-screen persona. Today, it's different. It's everybody's sort of like a freelancer and on their own, and they're not protected. Sean Penn, I think, was probably
a good point. I'm sorry, I just wanted to talk about the studio for a second because I don't want to cut you off about Sean Penn. I have to thank Sean Penn because his volunteer group actually was the people who got me my vaccine. But you were going to say about Sean Penn, and then I want to.
Well, I mean, I love Sean Penn, and he's a great actor, but he had a reputation in the beginning of his career to not like to be photographed. He wanted it both ways. He wanted to be a famous actor, but he didn't want anybody to take his picture. And that's why he got so much flack for it.
One of the most indentured servant-like experiences for anybody who has ever worked in film. And you and Randall have both done this. And Randall, I really want to see how your experience and Bill's line up. Is both of you guys have been background actors. And it's been my experience, and I don't want to bias your response, but I feel like the background actor, if it's a feudal system and say the director is the lord and maybe, an actor is a knight or a count, I mean, the background actor is a serf. So both of you boys, do you feel that like when you're doing background work on a film, it's ugly work? Yeah, just, Bill, I know you were on. You don't have to tell me which film, and Randall, you don't have to tell me which TV show. Though both of those things were very popular in the late '90s. Hint, hint. But what's the experience of doing background work, guys?
Well, I guess I'll speak first. I'll just try to be brief. I worked for about a year doing background and on lots of different things, and there's not much of a bar for entry for doing background work. So there are all sorts of different people from all sorts of different classes and life experience doing background work. I mean, there's literally homeless people I met doing background work who are working alongside with me. And, it doesn't take a lot of work to do. It doesn't take a lot of skill, I would say, to be a background actor. And it's very boring, as Bill's already said. Most sets are boring. I mean, imagine, working 12, 18-hour days on a set, and you really don't have anything to do, hardly. And so there you go.
How about you, Bill? Did you find, what was your experience like?
I've only, actually, I was only a background extra on one movie. It was actually Titanic. It was a background extra down in Baja. And I had a very good friend who was working on the film and said, would you like to be an extra? And I drove all the way down to Mexico. Actually, it wasn't that far. It's only, I think it was like an hour's drive south of Tijuana. And they had a big studio, and I saw the big replica of the Titanic, and I was a coal stoker in the big scene where Kate Winslet shows up to see the Titanic. Yeah.
Can we see you in the movie?
No, you can't see me in the movie. But I mean, it was really interesting because it was like working on a Cecil B. DeMille movie in the sense that, I mean, he was James Cameron was, he wanted everything to be authentic. And I remember he did berate an extra for wearing white socks. They apparently didn't have white socks in 1912, and so I mean, it was just. But yeah, it was sort of like being cattle. But that was my.
I assume you're not allowed to look at the actors or talk to the actors, or
unless... It's not something that you could use. But then again, if the actor talks to you, you can talk. I mean, it's one of those things.
Now, before we get back to your writing, you also have been on the other side. You've been on the money side. You've made trailers. We've seen these trailers in movie theaters. You've made some pretty good ones. I like the one that you did. It was not Jeff Bridges. You want to tell us some of the trailers that you did?
I worked for a trailer company for about 2 years. I was as a writer, writing copy for trailers is, it's a very niche-y. And it's true, most trailers with narration always start out with "in a world," and when a
Don LaFontaine.
when a studio is trying to sell a movie, it was a part of the business that I thought was really funny, because there were many times where I was given a movie to write narration for, and the movie was a comedy, but they didn't want to sell it as a comedy. They wanted to sell it as a drama. And it was just kind of weird that's something. They'll look at a movie and they'll look at the strengths and the weaknesses, and that's how they decide to sell a movie. It was a very strange
Did they ever try
part
to
of the
hide
business.
or bury the movie, make a movie sell the sizzle more than the steak because the movie's not that good?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's different trailers. There's 30-second spots. There's minute spots. There's 2-minute spots. Because now movies, and even when I was doing it, movies are sold to international audiences. So the more action shots that you have, the more that they're going to put in. It depends what the strength of the movie is. But many times I would write narration for a movie trying to sell it as a comedy when it wasn't a comedy. There was one movie in particular. I wrote a trailer for a movie called Bowfinger. It was with
I remember that movie with Eddie Murphy and Steve Martin. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was I thought it was a very funny movie, but they kind of wanted to sell it as kind of an adult comedy, and it was kind of hard because it was an Eddie Murphy movie, and they didn't know how it was going to play, and it was a very strange part of the business. I only did that for a couple of years, but it was great. It was great money.
So they wanted Bowfinger to look like in the trailer like an adult comedy.
Well, they would have
sophisticated comedy.
They would have different demographics. So they'd have trailers for 18 to 35-year-olds. They'd have trailers for 35 to 55-year-olds. That's what they do. They'll cut different trailers for different demographics.
Right. Okay. So you had to make a trailer
and they'll
for
sell it.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just kind of weird how they try to sell a movie. They're just trying to sell its strength. There's a lot of times when comedy actors will do a drama. Jim Carrey did a drama once, or Bill Murray did a drama. It was The Razor's Edge. I'll never forget.
Oh, yeah.
And it was actually a Tyrone Power remake. And they knew that a movie wasn't going to make any money, so they tried to find every single funny part of the movie, any Bill Murray shtick they would put in the trailer, because they knew people weren't going to pay money at that time to see a Bill Murray drama. This was with the hype. This was Ghostbusters, and this was one of the first dramas he ever did. So they tried to sell the movie as kind of lighthearted when it wasn't. It was a very deep drama. And so
you didn't personally work on that trailer, though, right?
No, I had friends that worked on
it.
And so they had to find all. It's a very interesting sales, and you try to sell the strength of your product.
You see the business end. You've seen like literally every part of the sausage. But I'm gonna go back to you being a writer. So, what year did you get into WGA?
I got into WGA in 2003.
Okay. Your films. So people can.
I wrote a couple of. I co-wrote, I should say, a couple of bad movies that actually got made, and that's another thing. It's like getting a movie made. It's almost a miracle. I don't know how movies get made. I mean, it's like some of them are happy accidents, some of them are terrible accidents. I wrote a movie. It's a funny one. I wrote a movie with Dolph Lundgren. It was called Stormcatcher. It was the movie was pre-sold because the producers had found stock footage of a stealth bomber. They found this wonderful footage of a stealth bomber, B-roll, and they wanted to make a movie about a stealth bomber. They had pre-sold the movie in Europe because Dolph Lundgren is a big star in Europe, and pre-sold the movie for about $20-30 million without the movie being made, just with Dolph Lundgren on a poster with a stealth bomber
to a European distributor.
Right. And so we wrote a movie about a stolen stealth bomber based on footage that they had acquired.
That they already sold, because they sold it. They needed a script.
They needed a script,
right?
And they needed the movie to be done very quickly because they had pre-sold. So that was one of the movies. It's pretty bad. Then I wrote a movie for Charlie Sheen. It was called No Code of Conduct, and it was kind of they had written a script. Charlie Sheen and the director Bret Michaels, who was the lead singer of Poison, great guy, loved him. They had written a script, and it had a lot of problems. And my partner and I were brought in to make sense of it. And we kind of were trying to make a kind of like a Sam Peckinpah thriller kind of getaway kind of thing, and it turned into something else. But that's the thing about movies, and meaning that they're happy accidents. Sometimes movies go in with the best intentions, and you could, have the greatest script, and you could still make a bad movie, even if you have the greatest script in the world. But you could never make a great movie with a bad script. So,
and I want to say this about you, Bill, because you won't say it, and Randall doesn't know this, but Bill is a really good playwright and writer of things like history. History is one of your great specialties. You do write serious drama, the kind of stuff that a lot of times gets made into Oscar bait, as I like to say. But it's not like your sole love is, action film per se. Like most writers in this town, I think there's what you do, and then there's the things of your work that gets produced. So sometimes we're known unfairly by what gets made versus what we like to make.
Right. Well, the bread and butter for a writer, for a working writer, is usually getting an assignment. Yes, people sell scripts, people make their own movies, but to work, to get constant work, you are writing on assignment. A studio will need a writer to write an idea. A producer will need a writer to write their ideas. It's not that you're a stenographer, you kind of are, because it's not your idea, but that's where you get paid, or you get paid on rewrites, where that's the real bread and butter for a writer.
Again, another thing which is not as glamorous as you would think. So you're in the WGA, and this is now we're finally getting back. Thank you, audience, for waiting up a bit. I got so interested in this, I wanted to take a side dive. But so the WGA, every year, the Writers Guild of America, they have their own awards, comes out before the Oscars. They recognize excellence in writing in documentary, in television, in film. Any other things, or is it just documentary, television, and film?
Yes.
And we're just going to focus on film today, and not even documentary. We're just going to focus on two categories: the adapted screenplay and original screenplay. Now, there's obviously two rounds. There's the first rounds where they just pick what is going to make it to the final round, and then there's the actual final round. And folks, the odds normally of so the way the Oscars does work is that before they come up with the final list of nominations, everybody in their respective category gets to pick. So actors pick best actors, and screenwriters pick best screenwriting. And again, in the Academy Awards, there's best adapted screenplay, best original screenplay. People who've selected, not the people who vote on it. Everyone gets to vote on everything. But when you see those 5 nominees for each of those screenwriting section, which is actually 10, when you see those have been chosen by screenwriters who are members of the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences, and 99% of those are members of the Writers Guild of America. So there's a great deal of overlap between I would argue, and tell me if I'm wrong, that really, if you're a member of the Academy in the screenwriting department, you already have seen a lot of you've already had to deal with this just by being a voting member of the WGA.
Yes.
So it's like almost like, well, I already just did this to the WGA, so now I got to do it again for the Academy. Okay, so I guess my first question to you was, how does the initial selection process for the WGA work? How do you guys get that first list? How do you get the first group?
Well, they usually send out a list of all the films that were written in the year, written by a WGA member. They have to be in the guild.
So if it was not, if they were like, if I'm from England and I'm not in the WGA,
they would not be. I'll give you a good example. Last year, Quentin Tarantino was not nominated for a WGA writing nomination for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He didn't get a Writers Guild nomination. He's not in the Writers Guild.
Oh, I see. So that's
And
interesting.
so, yeah.
Oh, makes sense. So a list of every single film, right? So, oh my God, how do you guys get from every single film to like 5 films?
Well, again, it's the entire year with the WGA, and I know with the Directors Guild and the Producers Guild. During the year, you don't get the screeners all year round, but the Writers Guild has the WGA theater, and they screen movies all year round. So you can, with your card, get into the Writers Guild theater and get to see movies that will interest you.
Great.
So you're basically not paying for it. Yeah, you get to see free movies
Do they
with
give
a
you
bunch of
popcorn?
disgruntled writers, huh?
They give you popcorn?
Yes, they have popcorn and drinks, and it's like a regular movie theater.
Wow.
But it's with a bunch of writers. Writers are funny. It's not really. They take their movies very seriously, but most writers.
I've gone with Bill to these screenings, and for the most part, it is like it's like any 3 p.m. showing in Manhattan. To me, it's a bunch of grumpy people wanting some free movie. No one looks glamorous. Everyone looks like they.
Well,
it's.
Well, I've
true, but
been to the WGA theater too. Actually, I've seen a movie there, and yeah, it's like I know somebody else is in WGA, and yeah, it's like an old movie theater in the middle of Beverly Hills, and they have a lobby, and they have one screen, and it's a big screen. So it's a large.
It's a nice screen.
Room.
It's a nice screening,
and they have a concession stand.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Bill. Go ahead.
Yes. No. It's a regular movie theater, but the only thing is that you're watching it with a bunch of disgruntled writers, and I include myself in that, because most writers look at movies differently. They're analyzing the film and seeing how they would have done it better.
Yeah. So every time the film ends, every time I've gone with Bill and the film ends, there's a mad rush to the bathroom because it's mostly old people.
Mostly older people.
They've really held it in for a long time. And as all the guys are waiting online, you all hear this like,
Bill. Well, Bill, I have a question. How do you get in the WGA? I mean, Quentin Tarantino, that surprises people, I'm sure, that are casual listeners.
Well, that's his choice. That's his choice. He could obviously get in. It's on a point system. You can apply to it. You get points for everything, anything you've written, anything that you can write. But I got in. I pitched a movie idea to Showtime, and they bought my pitch, and they were signatory to the WGA. So since they bought my pitch, I got into the WGA because of that.
So the WGA. So you apply to the WGA. The WGA looks at your credits, and then they decide.
They decide. Yeah, it goes through. It's like a point system. You get a point if you made a short film. You get a point for that. If you made a little independent thing, you get a couple points for that. But usually, it's if you sell a script by a studio buys your script, they will get you in. You will get into the WGA because all the studios are signatory with the WGA.
And the advantage of being in the WGA is what?
WGA is.
I mean, what's the advantage of being in it for a writer?
That's a very good question. It's more of. I would say it's to a certain degree status. You are protected by the WGA. Although anybody can be protected by the WGA. The first thing anybody should do if they write a script is register your script with the WGA. Now, non-WGA members can do that. You go on their website for non-WGA members and you register your script. Why do you register your script? You protect your idea. You protect your script. Writers do get ripped off. That is a fact. It is a fact.
So back to my original
they protect you.
Question, which got sidelined, guys, which is that, okay, so now you got your big 5-5, your 2 categories. It's Oscar season, it's WGA season, it's the special season. So what, they send you guys, screeners?
Well, before screeners, your WGA card would get you into the movie theater. Any movie theater in Los Angeles, you present your WGA card, and that would get you into the movie. So that was my favorite time of year. It started, now the awards are at different times. used to be January. The Academy Awards used to be at the end of January. So from October, November, December, your card could get you into all the prestige movies that were made at the end of the year, which was fantastic. Then you had the WGA theater, which would also get you movies in for free as well. Then you would also get the screeners. But the funny thing is, it's just like politics. There's a spin. There's a word buzz for the film goes out, and it's sort of a campaign, a marketing campaign. And usually the trade papers.
What does that campaign look like?
Well, people will buy ads in the Hollywood Reporter or Vanity, Variety, and they'll place an ad and place a picture of an actor or a movie or a writer of the movie, and they'll say, for your consideration, Bill Gucwa for No Code of Conduct, for your consideration. And it's sort of like reminding people or showing people that, especially within the industry, that, what is that movie? It's publicity for the film.
And
but
then you
just
get the DVDs, right? They mail you these DVDs.
They'll mail you now. They'll still mail you the DVD, but now you'll get an app. And you could put it on, if you have a Roku on your television, you can download the app. And now all the nominated films are on a special app with a secret code, and you can watch all the movies without even getting the physical media.
They were like beautiful, weren't they? The boxes.
Depending, yeah. It was nice. You get a nice collection, a really nice movie collection.
And they give you sometimes little illustrations. It's pretty. It's pretty.
It was my favorite time of the year because you would get them in the mail, and you'd usually be UPS, and you open it up, and oh my gosh, it's 1917 or the new Star Wars movie, or you're getting it on DVD. Now the Academy. Their screeners are far better. They would get Blu-rays. They wouldn't get regular DVDs. Wow. They get Blu-rays. They get a higher quality, and they get everything. Whereas writer screeners, it's usually movies with strong writing in it. They're not going to really you're not usually going to get a screener for a movie that was, that was good for an actor, that was with strong acting in it. It's usually with strong writing.
And I'm assuming those ones we get. Sometimes at the screenings, they actually have the writer being interviewed.
Yes, that was another thing. Yeah, you would go to the screening of the movie, and they usually would have the writer or director, usually the writer, talking about the process and how they came up with the idea. And it was a great insight. It still is, and that's another benefit of being in the WGA.
I remember I don't know if it was the WGA, but I remember when Dick came out, I was with a friend who was a member of many different things, and Annapurna is a big film company. And not only did they have the director, Adam McKay, and the lead actress, Amy Adams, but afterwards, we had this food and wine. It was like going to a wedding. I literally, it was like a full bar. I've never seen so much food, so much buffet food since I was at a really expensive wedding. I mean, they really spend a lot of money on these things, don't they?
Oh, gosh, absolutely. I went to a screening of a film, and it was about a seaside town. It was Shipping News, the movie was called. It was years ago.
Oh, yeah, with Kevin Spacey. Yeah,
and there was I'll never forget this. There was a mound, I swear to God, a mound on a huge table of sea scallops and crab. Wow. And oysters. It was, a gigantic mountain of seafood, because it was seafood. It was sea themed, ocean themed, and just thousands and thousands of dollars of food. And that's another thing, getting the free drinks and free food.
Do you think the producers are doing that because they want to impress people in the WGA for some reason?
There is an element to that. There is an element of selling the film, making people remember what you saw. There definitely is an element of that. Persuasion.
Trying to win awards.
Trying to win awards. There is coercion. It's selling. It's selling. Selling the movie.
They're spending all this money. You're getting to meet the actors, the directors. They're wining you. They're dining you. Now I got to know, what is your decision-making process? How do you choose among the five screenplays nominated for original screenplay? among the 5 screenplays that nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay. What's your process? Do you sit down and watch all the movies? Do you talk to friends? How do you take us through that?
Well, I mean, I try to when you get the list of films of the whole year, without the list, you're hard pressed unless the movie really made an impression on you. You're hard pressed to remember the movies you saw in February when you're getting
the final
by
five.
the end of the year. Yeah, but the final 5, there is a buzz that permeates in the industry of a movie. It happened this year with Nomadland. I mean, everybody knew it was going to win Best Picture. People were saying it, and they hadn't even seen the movie. It was just a given. So there is a group think that occurs with the writers, with actors, with everybody. And
so over at the WGA, do you talk to your other writer friends?
Yes, usually after a screening, you're in the lobby, and what did you think of that movie? And there's always discussions. That's the thing in Hollywood, that people that work in the movie industry love movies. And so they love to dissect them. They love to talk about them. They love to disagree about them. But there's always 2 categories. There's the movies that are going to win and the movies that you think should win. And that's completely different, especially when it comes to the Academy Awards, because there is politics that goes on.
So when you're at the WGA, I think it's fair to say that there's a conversation. You might have it after the movie. You might have it playing golf with a friend, having coffee later. It's like, hey, did you see this? Did you like this? No, yes. You think it's going to win? Maybe. No, yes. But there's always 2 different conversations. So,
well, let me get. Are we going to move on to the Oscars now? Because I want to ask some nuts and bolts questions.
No, I'm actually going to let me finish what I'm thinking, and then we're going to talk about the WGA, and then we're going to get to the Oscars. But all in good time. So, what did you vote for Best Adapted Screenplay this year? What did you vote for Best Original Screenplay this year?
I love the movie News of the World. I think
so you voted for that for best. That was the Best Original Screenplay, right?
Yeah. I thought that movie was fantastic.
And then what did you vote for Best Adapted Screenplay?
The Best Adapted Screenplay. I'm sorry, remind me of the nominations.
Absolutely. So Best Adapted Screenplay included the following: Borat, subsequent, I don't remember, Borat.
Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
The Father, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, News of the World. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Adapted
News of the World was adapted. Okay.
Sorry, let me go back. Original Screenplay.
Okay.
My question to you: what did you vote? And that was Promising Young Woman, Judas and the Black Messiah, Palm Springs, and Sound of Metal.
I love Sound of Metal. I thought Sound of Metal was I thought that movie should have won Best Picture. But again, you always vote for what you think should win, not what everyone else is voting for.
Okay,
and I think
so
there is a group think.
What did you think about the fact that the things that you voted for lost? And what do you think that how do you feel about Borat winning the WGA's adapted?
I'm a little bit confused by it. I thought it was a lot of improvisation, and they kind of strung it together with maybe a script. I'm not sure. So I think it was a little disingenuous.
Okay.
Adapting a screenplay is really, I did not like the movie, but I didn't like the first one either. So
The Father won Best Screenplay at the Oscars. Did you think that was a better choice?
I think so, because that was based on a play, and usually plays that are adapted into screenplays usually are strong nominees to win.
That was Christopher Hampton, who did Dangerous Liaisons, among other things.
Yes.
A great playwright. And then how about A Promising Young Woman? That went for both the Oscar and the WGA.
I did not see that movie. I just, again, was not in a frame of mind to see that movie, but I hear it's good.
Everyone I know has said, like, I turned it off. I know the plot of it. It seems terrible to me. I honestly think I have my own thoughts on it, which I'll get into later. But do you think the WGA, not the Oscars, but do you think overall the WGA is more of a meritocracy that does most of the time reward good writing? Or do you think it's more about politics at the WGA level?
To the WGA's credit, I think they really try to give awards to the best writing, because writers are so critical. We've seen every movie made. We know the 3-act structure backwards and forwards. And when a writer likes a movie, it's got to be good. They don't vote for mediocre.
Okay, well, all I'll say is, boy, did you guys screw the pooch this year by picking Borat and Promising Young Woman. Really terrible.
You know what? I should have seen Promising Young Woman.
Can't respect the WGA on either.
Hey, Bill, I got a off-the-wall question. Isn't Sound of Music like a Canadian movie?
Sound of Metal?
Sound of Metal.
Is it? I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Well, do you think the Canadians are better at making movies than us?
Can you name, how many great Canadian films can you name?
I don't know, but there's a lot of good TV shows.
There are.
But
Schitt's Creek is great.
Sound of Metal was definitely one of my favorite films of the year. If you haven't seen it,
I love it.
It's not about metal.
No.
People thought it was about metal, and it's not. It's about a lot of things I don't want to say. So now let's get on to this new Steven Soderbergh production called The Oscars 2021. Randall, why the hell was that at Union Station?
Well, I read a little couple sentences in Variety that said that it was basically to get it made at all because theaters are closed in LA because of COVID. So the only way you can do an event like the Oscars is by pretending it's like a film shoot, which is what they did. They hired like a big director. They had different kinds of cameras. They decided to do it on a location instead of in a theater. And that location, by the way, is Union Station, which is a Los Angeles city property. So guess who gets the rent money from that one? So I'm sure all those things helped it. And, and because it was a movie TV production, they didn't have to wear masks like a normal workplace. So there you go.
So, Bill, why Union Station, do you think?
I don't know. I was a little confused by it. I mean, Union Station doesn't represent the glamour of Hollywood, but they certainly were trying to push it that way, because on the local news stations, they were doing a piece. KBC was doing every day. They were doing a live feed from Union Station explaining how glamorous and wonderful it was.
It looks like it came from like the 1940s, like the old Oscars event.
The Art Deco, and I get that, but I just thought it didn't really represent. When people come to Los Angeles, they don't say, "Let's go visit Union Station."
But you think they were going to the old school Hollywood 1940s supper club Oscars?
I think what Randall mentioned, if in the article, I think that was probably a really strong consideration. But I thought it was neither here nor there. I did think it looked very, very, very pretty. I liked the look.
Now let's talk about Union Station. Like, why I think that was a horrible idea for the people who actually needed to use Union Station that day. I mean, you're right that's a train station, folks. That's our Penn Station. That's our Grand Central. That's our Port Authority. That is where, if you are taking any of our subways, that's a main hub. If you're taking an Amtrak, that's a main hub. I mean, it's a big deal. And right now we were using the front of Union Station for COVID testing. They had to move them to the back. It was where homeless people were. I mean, guys, how did you feel about all the disruption to Union Station? Do you think that was fair?
Well, I just want to say that Union Station, there's a lot of events there. They have a lot of events there. I mean, there are weddings, I think, people have at Union Station. It's a large space that the city rents for all sorts of different things. So I would guess the disruption was fairly minimal. I mean, I can totally see why they picked that location.
No, it wasn't. I mean, I was just talking to Bill about this, right? About the homeless shelters, the people who were living there.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought it didn't bother me when I found out about it, but as I was watching the show, I couldn't help but think of all the people that were displaced because of that show. And I just thought the hypocrisy for me was a little unnerving. And it was something that just was leaving a bad taste in my mouth the more I was watching the show. And I just didn't like it.
I mean, it's terrible to think that you couldn't park your car if you were going to get a COVID test because they took up the whole parking lot. I honestly think it was like being colonized. I get that the show is supposed to be about look how socially progressive and how much we care about people, but I don't think there could have been more imperial if they tried than to spend $30 million and take over Union Station.
It was a little like I said, it was a little hypocritical. They had cordoned off the entire area. If you've ever been down to Union Station, you know that the homeless problem down at Union Station is pretty bad. It's not as bad as Skid Row, but I would say it's second or third. The freeway overpasses to get to Union Station are lined with tents. And from what I understand, there was a news report on KTTV on Channel 11 about them clearing out Union Station a week or a month before the show. You had Tyler Perry giving a humanitarian get a humanitarian award talking about homelessness, and he gave a great heartfelt speech, and I loved his speech. It was wonderful, but I couldn't help but think 200 yards away are people living in ditches and in lake bed or in the riverbed and on freeway overpasses. And you had all these people in limousines coming to Union Station talking about this homeless problem, and they disenfranchised a lot of people to create this show. For me, I thought it was bad optics, very bad optics.
I think you compared it somewhat to the Hunger Games.
It reminded me of the Hunger Games. It was sort of like the Hunger Games was putting on this show, this game show, and you had people dressed in these outrageous outfits. Meanwhile, people are foraging for food, watching the show on TV, and it had a Hunger Games feel to it, which I couldn't. Some of the dresses reminded me, I'm like, oh my God, this is Hunger Games. This is happening right before our very eyes.
Like Amanda Seyfried's red dress.
Amanda Seyfried, she's gorgeous. I love her. She was wearing this tremendously large red dress, and it looked like the Hunger Games. It was unbelievable. I don't know. He was like,
it sounds to me like a normal day in LA, honestly. But listen, guys,
it's nothing new.
What did you think about these choices made that Soderbergh, a really great director in my opinion, though he can be hit or miss? What do you think of the choices he made about using film, about not cutting off actors, by not showing clips? Let's think of this.
What did I think about it? Well, I just thought that it's normal for these award shows. I mean, I've never liked these award shows. I don't even know why they have them. I mean, there was we had a peak award show, like I don't know when it was, like in the 90s or so. Like MTV had an award show, Nickelodeon had an award show. I mean, it's like a way of as some old awards ceremonies turned into shows. It's like a way of trying to get real cheap ratings, I guess, real cheap programming. But these award shows are not that interesting. I mean, the Oscars was never that interesting. I don't even know why people ever watched it.
Oh, I couldn't disagree with you more. There was a time when people like Bob Hope and Johnny Carson were damn funny. You get to see live music by people you liked. You get to see clips of films that you were really interested in seeing. No, the Academy Awards are really worth watching.
Well, all those elements
so popular in 1970.
Well, all those elements you just cited aren't really part of the award show. I mean, they're like extras, I mean,
but the Academy Award is a form of entertainment.
Well, it's an awards ceremony. It's been turned into entertainment, I would argue, but it's not entertainment. It's not very entertaining all by itself.
Well, it when it's done right, it's an entertaining experience. But do you think, Bill, do you think that the choice to about a host with unlimited time to talk, do you think this was a entertaining version of the Oscars?
I think I love the Academy Awards. I've watched since I was a little kid, and I'll continue to watch the show. But every year it's criticized for being a bad show. This is nothing new. It's every year it's too long. The movies weren't good, but people still watch them. Now, it was an all-time low this year. There's several reasons for that. I think I mentioned the Hunger Games and the show being completely out of touch. because of the pandemic, I think they did not make a wise choice in having the Academy Awards this year. Not that they couldn't have had that. All the other shows, the SAG Awards and the DGA Awards and even the Writers Guild's Awards were done on Zoom. They were done on Zoom. They were our shows, and they gave out their awards. I think the Academy would have done themselves a better service if they would have done the same. A lot of people lost their jobs this year, especially in the movie industry and all the movie theaters that are shuttered. The movie cost somewhere from $30 to $40 million. They could have had a GoFundMe thing, and they could have had all the people that maybe lost their jobs. Instead, they held this surreal, weird cocktail club party and did themselves a major disservice, because a lot of people are still hurting from this pandemic. We're in Los Angeles and the numbers are going in the right direction, but there are still parts of this country where that's not happening. Then added on to the movies that were nominated, the movies that were not were television films. Maybe they would have been released theatrically, maybe they wouldn't have. We don't. So movies, even though they were being able, you could stream them, people didn't see them. So the nominations were flawed and to begin with. So you have a combination of the pandemic, you have a combination of the movies that were released in the year, and they would have done themselves a better PR, would have held it on Zoom and been more magnanimous about helping the movie industry, and maybe tying in the new Academy Museum that's going to be opening up this late summer. They could have held it there. They could have held it in. They could have promoted their new museum with a very small gathering, and people could have accepted their awards online, and they did. And I think they just made a huge mistake.
Well, what do you think of, guys? Think about the hubris of Steven Soderbergh moving Best Picture so that Best Actor would close the show.
Well, he thought it would be another who's that guy that won for The Dark Knight? Heath Ledger. He thought it'd be another Heath Ledger situation. The guy would get a posthumous Oscar, and it'd be like this beautiful climax. But the Oscars, it's a real vote. People actually got to vote for it. They voted for Anthony Hopkins.
Well, before we get to that, like, Bill, when was the last time they actually with Best Picture?
The last early 70s, I forget the year, it was 72, 73. They gave out the last award, given an honorary Oscar to Charlie Chaplin. They had given out the Best Picture Oscar, and then they had given out the last award of the evening. That was the last time they changed it. So I think they were counting on that kind of a moment. And one thing's for sure, there's always a curveball. There's always an unexpected. It's live television. People expect something to happen. Somebody not winning, somebody winning that wasn't supposed to. And I think they put all their chips on the win for Bowman, and which is, everybody thought he was going to win. But the thing bothered me was the fact that they didn't have a contingency plan. They didn't even have a live feed for Anthony Hopkins. There wasn't even the thought of it. They didn't even protect themselves for it. And that is what was so unnerving. You knew they were going to make a really big deal out of it. They were expecting it. And it sort of was set the tone for the whole show. I think it'll be remembered forever.
And, it's interesting because they could have given Hopkins a live feed. They had other people in other parts of the world. They just decided not to even bother to give him a live feed.
Well, they didn't think an 83-year-old actor that had previously won for Silence of the Lambs, they didn't think that he was going to win.
Even though he had just won the BAFTA.
He did, yeah, exactly. So I think not having that contingency plan was poor thinking.
Well, you're pointing out to a problem. Go ahead, Randall.
I was just going to say, in all fairness, we don't know if they asked Hopkins and he refused because he'd rather go to sleep that night. I mean, he's over in the UK. He's like, it's
fair. It's morning.
He could have had a pre-recorded. He could have had something pre-recorded.
True, that's true.
Just like people have prepared notes.
But gentlemen, you're pointing out to this thing, which is there's the voters, which are the people, 9,000 members of the Academy, or the people that Bill talked about back in the day, the regular people with regular jobs who work, sometimes don't work, or are a little bit older, who vote and go to the movie. And then there's the idea of the Oscars. I think there's a small group of people in the committee, and they're very wealthy. I would tell you that they're very liberal, but what they would really, I would define them as, is socially liberal, economically conservative. And I think they confuse identism with economic inequality. So I, instead of really rewarding works that deal with equality, they tend to focus more on, well, look, here is a person of color. Here, yes, it's true, this film basically validates our view of society. I mean, it's very funny for playing Fred Hampton. So in one sense, great. Fred Hampton is the founder, one of the major importance of the Black Panthers. He is a true progressive, but at the same time, I think, Bill, you were saying this, he said he was influenced by Fred Hampton, but he's with society.
Well, yeah, he said he was influenced in his life by Fred Hampton, and that Fred Hampton was a Marxist revolutionary. That's what the story was about, and he had benefited his in a capitalist society. Again, the Humpty, I think, is what really turned people off.
The musical performance by her and the backup where people are dressed in black as if they were members of the Black Panther with no real knowledge about what they're talking about. It's kind of offensive. And
I first of all, yeah, I love her. I think she's great. But her outfit, I don't know if you remember, she was wearing this outfit with a cape and out of the Hunger Games.
Yeah,
she looked like an X-ray.
It had no sense of what the subject matter was. And I think it's because they would rather look at the beautiful costume and not what happens to Fred Hampton. I think Judas and the Black Messiah and I think Sound of Metal are films that really talk about struggle and oppression. I think Nomadland is a beautiful travelogue of the Pacific Northwest. I think that Nomadland starts out as being, look how difficult it is to be over 55 and not working, and somehow devolves into, look at places you can go in a van.
Well, I agree, Chris, but I think, again, the hypocrisy, that's what really gets me. Look at No Man Land won for Best Picture, and deservedly so. It's a great movie with a great message. But if you look at the Oscar speech, Chloe Zhang, or I forget her name, she with the actor. Okay, when she gave her speech, she only thanked the people within her family and the people that worked in the movie. I remember when Tom Hanks won an Academy Award for film, he gave a 10-minute soliloquy about AIDS and the stigma, and he thought that this movie that he made would be a bridge for people for a greater understanding. This was an opportunity for Nomadland to explain to people what this movie was about. Instead, we got speeches from people, from the artists, congratulating us and the people that worked on the movie. It would have been nice for the writer-director to talk about why she made Nomadland, because 300 yards away are people living in Nomadland, right outside the perimeter. And I thought that was just, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And it was just, I just detached from reality.
Hey, I have a suggestion. Yeah, Chris?
I was just saying, you and Randall, you guys, you've worked extras in background. Very for the Governor's Ballroom. There are so many real-life no-land people who are jobbing it, treated like crap by the Hollywood industry, and yet they award themselves a movie that they have no sense, I'm trying to say, sense of hypocrisy. Go ahead, Randall.
I just had a suggestion. Like, what do you guys think? Like that, the Oscars, maybe they should tell the winners like the night before that they won, so that when they go up on stage, they have like a good speech prepared. And I know that that's not how they've been doing it. They want to surprise everybody. But, expecting all the nominees to prepare like an awesome speech is just be ahead of time when like 4 of them are going to lose. It's just not realistic.
Well, the funny you should say that, Peter. It seemed to me that there was no time limit on the speeches. Everybody got to say as much as they wanted to say. Usually on the award telecast, and at a certain moment, and that it's time for them to wrap up their speech. It seemed that this year, everyone allowed to say whatever they wanted, which they should, for as long as they wanted. And what happened was people would be a tad narcissistic. And I think when there is have a time limit, you're going to get down to the if you let somebody talk for as long as they want, they start talking about themselves.
No
one was talking about the project, which I found was astonishing.
Years ago, in a different lifetime, myself and a partner of mine, a professional partner of mine, we had a toast making company, and one of the things we do every night after the award ceremonies, especially the Oscars, we're on local news, and we'd be on a segment called Academy Awards. Who showed gratitude? Who showed attitude? It really is always amazed me after those many years of doing it, how many actors, normally actors, sometimes directors, sometimes writers, could really see the difference between those people who took the time to write a few simple words that acknowledge humility and genuine thanks. A few clever, maybe they were funny, maybe they were just heartfelt, but some people really do. It's not that they think, oh man, I'm going to win, but they know this is eventuality, they should prepare, and they choose their words wisely. Whereas the people who just act like they've been struck by a bus, it rarely helps them. I think to this day, we still think of the famous Sally Field quote, "You like me, you really, really like me." And it will haunt you sometimes for the rest of your career. But while we're talking about things that it might do differently, is there anything you guys think they should go back to the host?
Oh, you're thinking maybe we should have a host again?
Yeah, you think we should have hosts? I think we all agree we should have time limits on speeches. I think we should go back to having people who actually know how to MC. Good.
Okay. This is gonna be the craziest.
They know how to work a show.
This is going to be the craziest idea, but maybe they shouldn't have a host. Maybe they should just pare it down to where they just tell all the winners that they won, come in and give a speech, and we'll give you your award during the ceremony. And so when the winners get their award, they have a speech prepared, and that's the show. And you could make the show into like an hour or something.
But there would be no suspense.
Yeah, well, yeah. But that's the way. Or you could just
be like, all right, come on here, these people. No surprise. We don't want anyone to have a heart attack. I don't know if I'd go with you that way. Bill, do you have any suggestions for future Oscar choices? How they could improve?
This telecast was not. It wasn't original. They have tried Osts, and again, a reflection of the movies. I remember vested interest in the Academy Awards because of the movies that were nominated. There were movies that everybody saw. There were movies that we loved. And last year, Steven Spielberg had come out and made a controversial statement about the streaming services and whether or not they should be allowed to be nominated for Academy Awards, and he was lambasted. He was completely lambasted. I think it is very important for the Academy because movies are bigger than life. We do want to be transported to a different time and place, and we don't want to. I mean, not that these movies made they were great message films, but through this year, Bill Maher put it best. Last week on his show, he said, that it was just a Debbie Downer Awards. And not only that, the reason why I didn't want to see Promising Young Woman is because I didn't want to be made to feel bad about being a male. I don't want to be made to feel bad about myself. I want to go to the movies to enjoy myself. Not all the time. A great message film is very, very important, but it's a mix between entertainment and social commentary. If you can mix the two together, but I will guarantee this: if you look at the history of film during the Great Depression, in the early 30s, they didn't make movies about the Great Depression. They made movies with Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. They made musicals. People wanted to escape the reality of their lives. And Hollywood would behoove themselves to keep making these message films. Maybe 10 years from now, we can see a whole bunch of epidemic films. But as it stands now, people want to escape. I will guarantee you that Steven Spielberg's West Side Story will make $1 billion, because making a musical will remind people of the lives that they're leading right now. People are going to go see James Bond when it comes out. That's Godzilla on streaming. People want to see it. They do not want to see the depressing lives that we're all living in this pandemic. So I just think, the Academy made a horrible mistake of hangout party and having this grotesque Hunger Games show, and it really damaged their brand. Really, really damaged their brand. They will come back, but they have to make entertaining movies.
Wow.
If they don't, are doomed.
That is, you know what, Bill? Next year when we do the show, we'll have you on again, and we'll see how your prediction fared. Bill, I want to thank.
That's just my opinion.
Is your opinion. Look, there's going to be people like, I love that movie. Why did you say it was bad? Because it was bad.
It's not bad. I'm not saying they're bad.
But some of them are good, some are bad. And with you, this is a good. Randall, do you have any last question for Bill?
No. He covered it. Sounds great. Sounds great, Bill.
You covered it, Bill. You gave Randall and I a reason.
Thanks, Randall.
Thank you again, Bill. Bill, always bring insight. We love having guests on the show. If you're someone listening, you have something to contribute, please let us know. We would like having guests contribute and give us some insight. Until then, I'm Chris.
I'm Randall.
That's Bill.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Our pleasure. Bye.